Wrestler Bitston, and today I'll be doing part 10 of my reaction to Decade in Review, the WWF in the 90's Full Decade Compilation. So if this is part 9, go watch that before you watch this one, but this will be part 10. So I hope you guys like it. If you guys feel big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, turn notifications, and let's get started.
Where the two agreed to face off once more for the title inside of a steel cage. So that was how we came to the biggest show of the summer on August 29th, with the two main events that surely blow fans away. Meanwhile, on the undercard, Alundra Blaze would once again defend the WWF Women's title, this time against Bull Nakano, all while Tatanka was picking up a victory over the now mid-card Lex Luger, and in the click segment of the show, Razor Ramon was winning back the IC title from Diesel. After that, the cage would be constructed and the Hart brothers would each enter, with them from there putting on arguably the greatest cage match of all time as, over the next 32 minutes, they had their second classic of the year and told a story that made complete sense throughout, with each constantly trying to escape and pick up the win. And this one would be so good that it actually ended up marking the second time Dave Meltzer would award a Fed match 5 stars that year. Come the finish, though, it would be Bret who would get the victory, retaining his title and seemingly putting the feud to bed. So with only one match left, expectations were high for the Undertaker versus Undertaker match to live up to the Hart showdown. Sadly, however, with Brian Lee playing the role of the fake phenom, and this still being the period before Mark Calloway was putting on great bouts routinely, the whole thing pretty much stunk up the joint, killing the crowd stone dead in the process. Thankfully then, it only lasted 9 minutes, and once it was over, the real dead man stood tall once more, re-establishing himself as the top guy in the company. Sure, it would have probably been a better idea to main event with Bret instead and make his title reign seem more important, but by this point, it was clear that Vince McMahon was once again losing faith in the Canadian, with him already having chosen someone new to replace him. Before that would happen, though, at a house show on August 28th, the Click's influence would continue to grow, as Shawn Michaels and Diesel defeated the Head Shrinkers to become tag team champions. As well as that, Randy Savage would make his exit from WWF, with his last appearance coming on the October 31st episode of Raw, as he, from there, followed Hulk Hogan over to WCW. And the week following this, McMahon would even give a heartfelt goodbye to the Macho Man on the air, with this being the last time he would ever mention him again, as he later found himself being blackballed for reasons that still remain unclear up until this day. Then, as if all that wasn't enough, on November 20th at an All-Japan Women's Pro Wrestling show in Tokyo, Bull Nakano would pin Alundra Blaze to become the WWF Women's Champion for the first time in her career. So, heading into Survivor Series, the final pay-per-view of the year on November 23rd, it seemed like anything could happen. And while the show was largely filled up with inconsequential 5-on-5 elimination matches once again, the most notable of which saw Shawn Michaels and Diesel finally split up after the latter had turned babyface, in the end, something big did change, as in the WWF title match, Bret Hart would face off against Bob Backlund, former champion and face of the company himself, and someone who had since returned to WWF with the intention of whipping the younger generation into shape. Still, despite his legit fighting credentials, no one expected him to beat the Hitman that night during their submission match. That was why it came as such a shock then, when after locking the champion in a seemingly endless cross-faced chicken wing towards the end of the bout, Owen Hart would get his final revenge when he threw in the towel for his brother, costing him both the match and the title in the process. Yes, it was a moment that no one saw coming and an unfortunate limp end to Bret's second reign, but things weren't done there as it happened, because after that, in the main event, The Undertaker would finally get revenge against the man who put him out of action for so many months when he defeated Yokozuna in a casket match, albeit this time with a little help from living meme Chuck Norris. And from there, with his weight continuing to be an issue, Yoko would begin to be phased down the card, something which must have come as a relief to the new champion, Bob Backlund. What he didn't realize, though, was that his title reign would be short-lived anyway, as at a live event in Madison Square Garden just 3 days later, he would be convincingly beaten by Diesel in just 8 seconds, as from there, Big Daddy Cool started his reign as the new face of the company. Yes, it looked like in finding a new big man he could get behind, one who was free of steroids, Vince McMahon had decided to throw the Hitman aside once again and fall back into his old familiar patterns of muscular.
But now we get to the infamous year, 1995.
Proved to be a short-sighted one in the end. He wouldn't realize that until the following year, a year which would prove to be arguably the worst in the company's history. But that's another story for another day, because this would mark the end of 1994, the year where, despite WWE's future feeling at its most unsure behind the scenes, on screen, they would put on at least 3 matches that can still stand to this day as being among the best ever. And the fact that they all included Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels was a sign of things to come in the near future. The year 1995 brought us a lot of great things. In the world of television, we were first introduced to Goosebumps. In sports, Michael Jordan would return to the court, and in the world of wrestling, WCW were formally lighting the fires of the Monday Night Wars by debuting their weekly primetime show, Nitro. However, when it came to the WWF, there were very few positives to be found as, over the next 12 months, they would go through arguably their worst year ever. Yes, the WWF in '95 has become notorious amongst longtime fans as being terrible. However, that's not to say it's not without its charm, with some of the wackiest gimmicks in wrestling history being introduced at this time. So, how did it all unfold? Well, join us today as we take a deep dive into the entire story from start to finish in the WWF in 1995, a year in review. Of course, when we last left off, things were looking positive. Diesel had just been crowned the new WWF champion, and Shawn Michaels' rise to the top of the main event scene was continuing at a fast pace. That said, there were also a lot of negatives as, despite overwhelming audience support for his work, Bret Hart seemed to have been dropped from his position as the company's top babyface, something which left a sour taste in many fans' mouths. And this negativity would only grow when, at the first big show of the year on January 22nd, the Royal Rumble, WWF would put on one of the weakest Rumble matches up until that point, with them making the odd decision here to have a new entrant come in every 1 minute instead of 2, leading to the whole thing being over before it felt like it had gotten started. But before we would get here, the undercard would see Razor Ramon losing his Intercontinental title to Jeff Jarrett, and The Undertaker continue his seemingly endless feud with Ted DiBiase when he was able to make short work of his $1 Million Corporation lackey, Erwin R. Shyster. After that, however, things would get more interesting as, in the finals of a tournament to crown new WWF Tag Team Champions after Diesel and Shawn Michaels' split had left the belts vacant, Bob Holly and the 1-2-3 Kid would team up to take on Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka, with the former duo ending up getting the win here to crown themselves the new top team in the company. And after the match, Bam Bam would find himself being mocked by former New York Giants star Lawrence Taylor, something which led to the Beast from the East losing his cool and trying to get into a kayfabe shoving match with a celebrity guest. But WWF officials were quick to calm things down and move on from there, as the first of 2 main events would see Diesel defend his newly won WWF title against the man who had been screwed out of it in the first place, Bret Hart. That said, this was no redemption story for the Hitman because, on this night, his role was to put the new champion over strong, something he did in typical professional fashion, even if it was already clear amongst a section of the fan base that they'd rather see him still on top. So it was lucky then that the fans would get something they wanted in the final bout of the night, because in the Royal Rumble itself, Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog would enter at numbers 1 and 2 respectively, with each going coast to coast from there as they powered through one of the worst Rumbles in memory, only to end up being the final 2 remaining after everyone else was eliminated. After that, it appeared that the Bulldog had managed to eliminate HBK, but with only 1 foot having hit the floor, the Texan was able to get back in the ring to dump out his opponent, winning the whole thing, and booking his ticket to WrestleMania 11 as another guest, Pamela Anderson, was there to celebrate by his side. Yes, it seemed like the long-awaited showdown between Shawn and Diesel was going to happen at the biggest stage possible. But before we would get there, the tag titles would change hands once more when...
I don't know why he keeps doing this, but...
The Smoking Guns would defeat Bob Holly and the 1-2-3 Kid to end their reign after just 1 day. And come WrestleMania on April 3rd, they'd still be holding these belts as they tried their best to give some wrestling focus to a show that was almost entirely built around celebrity involvement. Of course, celebs at the biggest show of the year was nothing new for WWF, as they'd originally built it on the backs of people like Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper. This year, though, it felt like, with such little confidence in the roster he had, Vince McMahon was putting every ounce of attention he had to the outside stars he brought in instead, to the point where it became a detriment to the show. Yes, this was one that could challenge WrestleMania 9 for the position of worst mania ever, with the undercard seeing Razor Ramon regain his Intercontinental title from Jeff Jarrett in a pretty nothing match. Owen Hart and Yokozuna team for the first time to win the tag titles from the Smoking Guns, and The Undertaker go 4-0 after beating another Ted DiBiase lackey in King Kong Bundy. Following this, Bret Hart would have arguably the worst match of his career when he faced off against Bob Backlund again in a submission match. Unlike their prior meeting at the 1994 Survivor Series, however, this one was marred by a scenery-chewing Roddy Piper acting as the special guest referee.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video, give this video a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, turn notifications, and leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel is my same thing, and yeah. Guys, again, I'm almost close to 540 subscribers. 540 subscribers, that's a lot. Future goal, I really appreciate it. Because again, this video shows my goal reach 1,000 subscribers. 4,000 people watching. So future goal, I really appreciate it. Because again, these videos help out you guys. I love you guys for all your support. Like I always say, I always mean. And yeah. I guess, also you guys want to watch this, it was made by Wrestle with Andy. Put the link to their video down in the description. But yeah. I guess there you go. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, leave a comment, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you guys for tomorrow for part 11 and 12 on my reaction to Decade in Review, the WWF in 90's Full Decade Complication. I guess there you go. Goodbye, and have a good day or night.